I feel like I have an aha moment almost every day. And I've done this 5 years. People stay in this industry a long time, and maybe that's because you learn something new all the time and it changes all the time. But I feel like I keep learning about new ways of utilizing the media, cool things you can do, new types of incredible creative that I could never even think of. It's an ongoing thing. I think my biggest challenge is, how do I tell that story best, or how do we at the OAAA or as an industry tell it best? Because we're so many different things and we can do so many cool things.
This is the Snarketing Podcast, for marketers, by marketers, talking to marketers with just a touch of snark. Now, here are your hosts, Valerie Vespa and Matt Wurst.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to what should be, I expect to be, I hope will be, an incredibly informative and entertaining episode of the Snarketing Podcast. You know me. I am Matthew Wurst.
And I am Valerie Vespa.
You know, you always say Valerie instead of just Val. I call you Val, so I felt like the need to be a little bit more formal. So Matthew today, it's time to get things buttoned up. This is Q4. It is go time. It's basically 2025. And once it gets to 2025, it's basically 2026 already. So let's get organized. Are you ready to put on your focus hat?
I feel like it's so appropriate that football season starts at this time because...
Okay, so the answer is no. We're not going to focus. That's what you're telling me. Okay.
Let's
talk about football. Great.
My whole point is that I feel like Q4 is like me running through that like paper like field that people make like football players run through, like as part of the excitement of like the
banner, when they're running out of the tunnel. Yeah, you're running out of the tunnel. You're breaking through. The ovation of the crowd is cheering you on.
Thank you, Matt. That's exactly what I'm trying to illustrate. Okay.
That's
how I feel.
I'm thought ready. Of you, I just kind of want to picture you in like a giant oversized football helmet, like Lucas from, and if anyone, I'm dating myself here, that movie in the 80s with Corey Haim. By the way, listener, you are getting way more than you bargained for. This is why the Snarketing Podcast is one of the top-rated podcasts amongst my family.
Yeah, right. It doesn't really matter who the guest is. It's really about our banter before the guest arrives. Just kidding.
Well, look, next week we're going to be together at yet another conference, so I think we need to get these sillies out of the way now. I just got back from one. We're going to another one. Can I ask you something? Are they basically just copying the agendas for each of these panels? Because I think they're basically all the same at this point.
I know, Matt. It's like, what are we learning that's new?
I mean, how's any work getting done if we're always at these conferences? Like, what are we actually sharing?
I went to one event, I guess. It was a single day event. And one woman got up there who I actually know. And she spoke to a specific case study, and I thought that was the most informative thing I'd heard from a conference style setting like this entire year, to be honest with you. Outside of going to this pharma conference, which I knew nothing about pharma.
So there's value. Look, remember, people go to these things for different reasons. A lot of people are going to network, to sell, to buy, to drink, to party. Everyone's got their own agenda. Mine is definitely a little bit of all of it, but I like coming away with a few nuggets of knowledge and a few new LinkedIn friends.
The reality is we don't get to see each other in person enough. And so unfortunately it becomes these larger conferences where we do. It would be really interesting to find a new dynamic and interesting way for people to network versus just like walking through big hallways of some mini mall or, massive expo center. How could they design these a bit differently for better networking opportunity?
Well, we could all just pretend like we're back in the pandemic and have Zoom meetups every Friday. Those are fun.
Yeah, I like that. If we're all going to be in person, how do we meet in person? They have these apps that are like, you can like click on it to like show interest in somebody. Like, who the hell actually responds to any of that?
So basically dating for marketers?
Yeah.
Like a dating app?
So. Yeah.
I will pass on that. Look, if it adds to our LinkedIn totals, That's really all that matters. You know what? I have a new LinkedIn friend. You know who my new LinkedIn friend is? Today's guest. And she's your friend. You've known her for some time because you're both in this same part of this industry, the out-of-home space.
Yes. She newer to it than me, though. I mean, I think she's more of a media person overall.
Okay, so she's actually bringing innovation and fresh ideas to some of these older, stodgy people who've been in it for a long time. Is basically what you're saying.
No comment.
Okay. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I just did. And I'm not going to put words in Anna's mouth because I want to hear what she has to say. So Can we just... Actually, she's in a hotel room in an undisclosed location. We're not going to mention it for security reasons. We don't want to out her. But she is at actually another conference and an event right now. But she has been gracious enough to step out to talk with us.
Yes, Anna Bagar. She is president and COO of the OAAA. And she has very big shoes to fill in terms of leading the industry and our efforts to evangelize the reasons why it should be larger than, the single-digit percentage that we are of the overarching media landscape. So she's got a very big job and lots to do, endless things to do. But it's certainly a fun industry. So, let's hear from her, though.
Yes, let's.
Thanks, Val. That was a pretty good intro, but I'll take it from here. Anna Bagar is the president and CEO of the OAAA, the Out-of-Home Advertising Association of America, which is the premier trade association for the U.S. out-of-home advertising industry. She's got an incredibly impressive background in the space, working brand side with Ericsson, then 5 years with the IAB. From out-of-home right to your phone or your laptop, or whatever you're listening on right now, let's welcome Anna here and now.
Hi, Anna, and welcome to the Snarketing Podcast. It is so lovely to meet you and have you as a guest here. We've been excited about this conversation for a really long time.
Well, thank you for having me. I have been and am very excited about it too. So it's great to be here.
So I know you and Valerie know each other. You are in and occupy the same big section of our ecosystem here in the marketing landscape. I am not as familiar with the intricacies of what you guys are doing day to day, but I would love just for you to tell us a little bit about your role, what you're doing, how and where your organization is situated. It's a lot of vowels, so I'm curious what they all mean. Knowing that some of our listeners may not be as familiar, please just give us a little bit of that context.
Absolutely. Very happy to. Yeah, I am in, as is Val, in my opinion, the most exciting, up and coming and coolest part of advertising. Also the oldest form of advertising, namely out of home. My job is I'm the CEO and president of the OAAA. So there's a lot of O's and A's and H's in the name, but basically what that means is that we represent the Out-of-Home Advertising Association of America is what it means. And we represent the entire out-of-home industry doing what trade associations do, research, promote the industry with, various different data points that can help sell. We do events, we gather our members in councils and committees and develop standards and guidelines and better framework for the industry. And then we do a ton of lobbying for the industry as well. So we're trying to grow the industry and we're also trying to protect the industry. And so far we've succeeded, I think, reasonably well.
And your path into this space, I know, has some really interesting, there's an interesting origin story here. And you're not from the United States originally, I don't think.
No.
But so Sweden is where were you working there? Did you grow up there and then came to the U.S. later for professional opportunities?
Yes, I am Swedish. I was born in Sweden. I was partly raised in Sweden. I have a pretty international background, I would say. But Sweden is definitely my home country and where I spent most of my life. I came to the U.S. about 15 years ago because my husband had an opportunity here. And we decided that we loved it so much that we wanted to stay. And when we decided that, and I also decided that I really would like to continue my career, I was on a long Swedish maternity leave, which enabled us for me to come along. But once I decided I wanted to start working again, I had a background in telecoms, and the mobile industry, on the tech side mainly. And it happens that this was in 2010, and the mobile advertising industry started to sort of very slowly develop. And I got offered a position at the IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, different trade association, to lead their newly formed Mobile Marketing Center of Excellence. And so I slid into the world of trade associations, advertising and marketing. I did have more of a marketing role in my previous job, so I knew about it, but it was not my industry. But when I did that, I learned to love industry work, and really like working at an association, working with members and kind of helping an industry go forward. And interestingly enough, I also fell in love with out of home, which has a very strong connection to mobile. So I sort of dabbled with it for about 10 years until I got the offer to join the OAAA, and then I jumped on it because I thought there could be no better job in the world trying to help that industry to grow, because it has so much promise. So anyway, a little marketing talk in there too, but that's my background. So I am Swedish, but I'm also now American.
You're a Swedish marketer. That's like swarketing, maybe. I don't know. We create our own. Yeah,
not Snarketing. Yeah,
it's not. Exactly. We'll get to Snarketing, but for now, it starts.
I'm going to steal that. I'm Snarketing. Yeah,
I do. I like that. So just talking a bit before we delve into out of home, because I think we're all kind of interested to learn more. I mean, obviously, I'm in it, so I know quite a bit. But I think for our listeners, your 8 years at IAB, feels like 40 years in internet time, right? As far as what you did there, how did that help you, move into your role into out of home? Like, what were sort of the commonalities? What were some of the similar challenges that you were up against? Like, how does one build the roadmaps for two seemingly very different worlds? But like you said, there are a lot of synergies.
Well, there are a lot of synergies in the sense that we were both on the sell side of media, really, which IB at that time, I think IB now has a much broader purview, but at the time we were really kind of representing the sellers, and we were building a whole new marketplace. Digital media it wasn't in its infancy, but it was almost in its infancy, and a very small market. And but our publishers saw a lot of promise in it. The internet was kind of growing and exploding, and mobile, the iPhone had just come out, and there all of a sudden was a mobile internet, and that's got to be a great place to advertise. And so that's kind of where it all started, with a lot of people saying not going to work, banners not interesting, no one's ever really going to like them, and mobile advertising, those of mini banners, forget about it. But I think we found ways, right, to change that perspective. We created research that proved the value and the effectiveness, especially over television, which at that time was the largest platform. And I guess in some ways still is. Well, digital now is the biggest platform. Actually, mobile is the biggest platform. But, we created research and we created a sales narrative that the whole digital industry could get behind. And that really helped growing the industry. Then, of course, the ecosystem evolved to, in-feed, social media, advertising, mobile became something very different. And that obviously helped. But we really built a framework that helped the industry grow and inspired people to both understand what it was and wanting to be in it, and for marketers to understand that real close connection with a consumer was important to have. Out of home is very different. It's a one-to-many media, and it's the oldest form of advertising. I think you could easily argue, but it's also a form of advertising that continues to grow with technology. Rishad Tabakawala, who's a sort of media strategist, former Publicis Group head of
and maybe future guest of this podcast. We'll see.
You should definitely have on this podcast.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant and fantastic. But he once told me that out of home is the only media format that only gets better with technology. Everything else just shifts, right?
Yeah, such a good point.
Radio became television, print became radio, became television, became the internet. Now it's like retail media, CTV, whatever. But out of home always prevails. So with any new technology innovation, if the industry leans into it, it would just help our medium better. So I feel like the jump from IAB to OAAA, even though it's an older form of advertising, has been around a long time. It's applying the same things, like explain what we are, how far we've come when it comes to tech, and build a new framework that helps advertisers and agencies understand better how they can buy and sell. So,
well, and there's a convergence, right? Like digital out of home, which is really, I guess, I still think of it as just out of home, but the
Yeah.
digital aspect of digital out of home has grown massively. And I think they kind of, create a positive feedback loop with each other because you're on devices, you're seeing things, everything is connected. It's projected to double. I'm trying to remember the stat, but it's projected to maybe double by the end of the decade, right? In terms of just like what the ad revenue is.
It's
What do you,
projected to be about 45% of out of home by the end of 2027. And it's,
okay.
when it comes to the number of signs out there that are digital, it's far less. So it depends on how you define digital too. But yeah, it's definitely the growth driver, and by far, the area in out of home that has the most like interesting things going on in it.
So I don't know if you separate these specifically in your mind, but, I think, as people are thinking about channels and where things go, there's still somewhat of a mindset shift that needs to happen in terms of just where and how people plan. Is that part of your remit, like educating people? And, I sometimes struggle with what all the terms even mean anymore, but like, what's more intimidating, overseeing all of mobile advertising for someone or explaining to your friends what a digital content newsfront actually is?
I think both of those two were quite simple, actually.
Okay. So help me.
They were so hard. Out of home is a little trickier because out of home is so many different things. There's so many different types of signage. There's so many different things you can do with it. There's so many different applications. So even though it's a smaller platform, it has so many different versions of it that sometimes it can be harder to explain. And then you have the whole thing, digital out of home, programmatic out of home, video out of home. In my mindset, it's all out of home. We're all about location, contextual advertising, reaching the consumer where he is in a way that is where the ad is the actual content. You're not monetizing content, you're monetizing a location, which make the a better experience, I would argue, for the consumer. What's digital is really the plumbing and the framework. A very static sign could also be digital. It's about how you buy and sell it and the ability to maybe add data to create a better advertising experience. But that is hard to explain. And I see you have a lot of questions.
Well, no, I mean, just in terms of like timing, right? Like you can move more quickly. You can display ads based on weather or time of day. And that's different than you could do with a more, I would say, traditional format. So I think that creates both opportunity and challenges because you always feel like you have to keep up potentially with real-time, contextual personalization.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of flexibility, but flexibility creates a lot of, then what's the right thing to do and when you do it. There's also amazing creative things that you can do though, and tell stories in different ways, but using more signage, at once. And I mean, there's digital adds so much richer flavor to what we're doing. And
I think
it's a very different approach too.
I think like the interesting part about innovation is that there's just like endless amounts of people that need an education on it, right? Like I think I'll forever have a job in just the fact that there's always these biases about people thinking that it's cumbersome and to engage with utilizing out of home as part of your campaign. Like I know, from where I work, like, programmatic has, the fact that we're plugged into multiple SSPs at this point has helped drive significant revenue growth for us. So like when you think about being up against giants like Facebook, Google, etc., TikTok, what do you think out of home's value prop is, versus some of those megas who are getting, obviously a larger share of the dollars? And how do you think we're kind of trying to at least, come up against that or be a part of that complementary? That's really my line.
Well, not that it really matters, but those guys are by far the biggest advertisers on out of home. So they've clearly gotten it. I think that's an interesting little
good point.
Look, I think out of home can be an amazing standalone platform if you have it depends on what you want to do. But for the most part, it's a media that sits right there in the omnichannel mix, right? Like we are the part that can bind these different platforms together and amplify the Facebook campaign or the CTV campaign or your venture into retail media or television, whatever it is. We are like part of that mix. We're a medium that can make any other medium better, stronger, and make any campaign if you add out of home to it. In fact, I don't think this is going to air, but today we released a study together with a group called Benchmarking, looking at how adding out of home to an already existing campaign mix, upping it can, without adding any extra dollars, just changing the composition and adding more out of home can create incredible optimization when you use some of the media that's not working really well for you and just put those dollars into out of home. So we just make things better, I would say, if you do it the right way. And we should work with these platforms and as part of the overall broader ecosystem.
Well, you kind of gave me an aha moment just there when you were talking about how the fact that these platforms are also some of the biggest marketers and advertisers in other channels, which like I never really thought about, but obviously I see it all the time.
Yeah.
Have there been any moments in your, I would say, let's say in the last few years since taking over the OAAA that have been like aha moments for you in this evolution of, or maybe it's not an evolution of, but in the ongoing improvement of the out-of-home industry?
I feel like I have an aha moment almost every day. And I've done this 5 years. And, people stay in this industry a long time, and that maybe that's because you learn something new all the time and it changes all the time. But I feel like I keep learning about new ways of utilizing the media, cool things you can do, new types of incredible creative that I could never even think of, right? It's an ongoing thing. I think my biggest challenge is how do I tell that story best, or how do we at the OAAA or as an industry tell it best? Because we're so many different things and we can do so many cool things. And I think sometimes we kind of get in front of that. I think the biggest thing is to simplify and make it easy to understand that we need to do. That's the biggest challenge, I think, because again, it's perceived as in one way, very simple, bold, bombastic medium. And in another way, something that's incredibly hard to do, plan, execute, and make part of something bigger. So it's a tricky space because it's so many things.
Yeah. So, I know that you're today you're in a hotel, you're at an event for, touting the business and doing your thing. So can you explain to us like how OAAA works with agencies and marketers and brands to educate them on the power of out of home? Like, can you talk about some of the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we try and be where they are. We try to be at events that they show up at. We also invite them to our space, obviously, but it's really about trying to sort of stay on top of where they are, what they're interested in right now, and making sure that they understand the value of out of home. I feel the brands are easier to convince because there's so many great examples and big national brands, if they want to have real impact, kind of have to have out of home as part of your campaign, but they're thinking more in one-offs. I think the area where it's harder is on the agency side, where they're constantly looking for efficiencies and making things simpler. And out of home is a little different. It's transacted differently. Programmatic is growing, but it's still not quite there yet, from their perspective. So we're sort of a little tiny player on the side that they're treating a little different. So it's like sort of getting in front of them and explain why it's important. I think research such as one that we released today really helps. Showing how it can make media work so much more efficiently and create, better campaigns overall. So we're out there again, talking about our research, a lot of showcasing. We have something called the OB Awards, which is the world's, I think maybe like the Medium, oldest award show. It's on its 83rd year, but it's like a real great showcase. Yeah,
I had no idea it was that.
No,
That's been going on that long.
Looking good for 80s. Looking good.
Definitely looking very good for 80s. But no, showcasing the incredible creative that this industry has and just kind of hopefully inspire them to do more of it.
So if out of home is the oldest, I was about to say the oldest profession. I don't think it's the oldest profession. Apparently something else has it.
Probably not, no. I don't know what that is.
The oldest form of marketing and advertising. I'm sure it was hard to capture data back then, right? There weren't the same sophisticated tracking tools and technology solutions even for that. But I know that we're increasingly distracted, right? I'm looking down at my phone when I'm walking through Times Square, and it's a miracle that I'm still alive and haven't been hit by a bus. But how has that technology changed? How have you been able to continue to improve even as distractions and other technology may be making it harder?
I mean, I still think, I mean, there definitely measurement and, attribution, well, audience measurement, attribution, frequency, all of those things. I think we're getting closer in out of home. We've taken great strides, and we hear all the time it's so hard to measure. I think today you can do a lot, and there's a lot of data out there that you can use and capture and, apply towards out of home, whether that's mobile data or operator data or things that, really help you track both foot traffic and traffic on roads, et cetera. So we've come quite far. I think we have good proof points. And then I think marketers see that it works once they apply it. So I think it's really about, honestly, from that perspective, make sure that they try it well enough that they get to a point where they can really see that if they take it out, it's not going to work as well for them. I think that that's an important part. But I think, again, the biggest thing with out of home, even if you're walking in Times Square and you're looking at your phone, you're still going to register those ads, probably more than you would online or in any other media format, where you definitely will be walking away from the ad. I have never seen anyone run really fast past a billboard because they don't like it, but I've seen, and including myself, clicking off, like screens or leaving the TV when the ads come on. You don't do that with out of home. You see it. If you're interested in it, you register. Sometimes you're being very pleasantly surprised by an ad. It may not have been targeted towards you, but it gave you an idea. And if you really don't like it, you just keep walking or you look at your phone.
So before we dive back into the conversation, I just wanted to tell you about a game changer in the lead generation arena. It's called Leadfeeder. They've been with us for a while now. They're incredible partners. And look, we all know the struggle of identifying those elusive website visitors and turning them into valuable leads. But what if I told you that there is a tool that not only promises, but delivers on supercharging your lead gen and sales efforts? That's what Leadfeeder does. Now imagine having the power to identify companies visiting your website and track their behavior in real time and seamlessly integrate it all within your CRM. Leadfeeder is not just a tool. It is really your secret weapon for efficient and targeted lead engagement. With customizable notifications, lead scoring, and GDPR compliance, Leadfeeder is changing the game. You ready to revolutionize your approach to leads and deals? Head over to leadfeeder.com for your free demo today. That's LEADFEEDER.com.
I mean, Matt, we've been doing work with pharma brands and measuring down to script lift. It's like the ability for us to measure is world of a difference from even 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's just that there's more devices, right? Like for me, and again, you guys educate me as the novice in this space, but I think of out of home to include, in-store displays, which is also kind of retail media, and it's also it all kind of converges because the consumer doesn't distinguish. They are living their lives, and you need to hit them everywhere they are, whether it's the second they wake up in the morning or when they're on the subway or when they're going to bed at night. So I think it's just a matter of knowing that there are more steps or more stops along the way that can be impressionized. Is that a verb? I don't know. Maybe I just made that up. But if you can measure the entire journey and all those steps, then you get better about optimizing.
You need to. I mean, just because you can put a sign or a screen somewhere, it doesn't mean you should, right? I think this industry, which one of the things that I have been most surprised about, and one of the things that continuously blows me away, is that these guys, and I'm just the association, I'm not actually doing it. They're masters at finding and scoping out location and know exactly where something should be. That's really, the strength of this industry. And the people who do it, they know what they're doing. And those signs are there for a reason and they work. Then there is a large group of other people who are passionate about the medium, but think that just because they have real estate and they could maybe monetize it, they should put a little sign up there. That's not going to work for you because consumers are probably not going to care about it. It might be too small or in the wrong place. So I think there has to be distinction, especially if you're buying out of home. You need to try and figure out who actually put some thought into this and what actually does work. And then, measuring those locations and making sure that they're, audited and, that I don't want to go down the weeds. I see Val's I'm not going to go into the whole reason how you actually measure this media, but But you got to make sure that the sign, and actually you should probably not care about the sign. You should care about that particular location and who you can reach in it, because different signs might perform differently with a different campaign. But figure out what your goal actually is and what you can reach, and that it will perform for you, that it's been audited, that it actually is the real deal.
Such a good point.
It's going to work. It's going to work for you. I guarantee you. These guys are like experts.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and I know Val, you're itching to jump in, but probably the most amazingly creative and probably the worst creative I've seen has been urinal out-of-home marketing inside bars and restaurants. So that is, you're right. It could be amazing and it could be terrible in the same spot at the same time.
It could be, and I don't know. I have never been to a urinal at a restaurant, at least one for men, at least not knowingly. So I'm not going to comment on it, but I would argue that you remember it, whether it was good or bad.
Unless you've had too many drinks, in which case the impression value is way worse. That's what I'm saying, right? Like it could be highly impactful or highly forgettable. Yeah.
That could happen when you're watching television too, or listening to a podcast.
That's true.
We could, all be a little tipsy from time to time.
Yeah.
So, like, as far as having been in this business for a few years now at this point, what has been one of your most spectacular? Like, is there a certain brand that you think just leans into it in such a great way, or was there a particular campaign, even if it's old, that just you still remember and think it was such a great way of showing up in the market?
Oh my God, there's so many great examples, and there's so many different types of examples. I mean, I still think, and it's just kind of, I should probably come up with a better example. I still think that Apple does incredible work.
Yeah,
it was my first thought, by the way, for the record.
Oh, I love that.
There you go. And again, a brand that is so about other things, and I think they pretty much do only advertising and out of home, and they're also very good at buying into locations and keeping them. But super simple, super appealing. It's just such great creative, and it's always in a space where you think about it. And then I think I'm a dog person. This year's Cannes Lions winner, or one of them in the out of home category, was, and again, Apple is usually just static billboards that just are there because they just want to create a landmark. They just want you to see it over and over again. So that works for them. The other campaign that I really loved, which I think actually ran in New Zealand, was a campaign that Pedigree, the dog food brand, had developed, where they used AI technology and out of home to create something really cool, which was basically taking rescue dogs that were up for adoption. And when you see advertisements for rescue dogs, it always makes you want to cry. They're shivering, sick, with no teeth, and they look terrible. And it's very efficient, makes you want to adopt them. But they wanted to take a different spin on it. So they took these rescue dogs, used AI technology, made them beautiful, fluff them up like nothing else. And then they use, location data to figure out okay, what area should we put up an ad for this beautified rescue dog? Where would people like a pit bull? Where would people like a poodle? Where would people like a golden retriever? And then in locations, they would put these dogs up on big digital billboards, fluffy dog, and with a QR code said you want to, or a website link where you could just go in and adopt the dog right away. And it was just such an intelligent use of our medium. That was just the best way of connecting with audiences and gathering a lot of information too about people who like dogs for Pedigree, right? So I thought that was just such an incredible campaign. And then, out of home, the biggest part of out of home is local advertising. And people don't think about it, and it's often kind of frowned upon a little bit, but I can tell you, and I think this might be out front actually, I live in New Jersey, I drive into New York. I'm a middle-aged woman. And when driving into the Holland Tunnel, there are all these billboards with, plastic surgery, commercials with before and after. It's not much more than that. It makes me want to have a facelift every day. It's so efficient, and I love it. So there's just the sky's limit. You have to be very smart about it, right? I probably shouldn't have. Maybe I should ask you to cut that example out. But it's it's the truth.
No pun intended. We can't trim that.
It's really efficient, and it works, right? Hopefully plastic surgery will too on me one day. And so there's just so many great examples. And then you have all this incredible, spectacular digital stuff that you can do with anamorphic. The whole Sphere experience is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But then you also have these beautiful murals that are more pretty than anything else that you could see. It's just, there's so many cool things you can do with that.
Valerie, you have a favorite? What do you like?
Oh my gosh. I mean, now that you've
It's
got
like your
Apple in
children. It's
my,
like choosing children, right? I know. I'm sorry. You have so
I
many.
know, I know. I mean, my good friend Ashley, who works at American Eagle, she's really leaned into like anamorphic design for a lot of the stuff that they do, and tie out of home to a lot of their campaign launches. Um, it's just, back in the day, like they'll orchestrate in Times Square, like a whale swimming through. I mean, we use that ad forever, but I just love
Oh yeah.
whales. So like the whale swimming through Times Square is just amazing. That was Samsung. Um, that's the thing. I think like when we're talking to clients, it's like really about not only getting them to consider using the channel, but then really aligning with creative so that they build for the platform and not just kind of repurpose, really think about out of home first in terms of creativity. So I think it's a game changer when they
Yeah,
do.
think of out of home first for your whole campaign because it leads just to if you do it right, like the social media, like the extra free media that you can get out of it is just. And I think in this day and age, when you can target efficiently, it's really efficient to target on social when a consumer shares it themselves, right? And out of home can
Absolutely.
drive
I will tell you just my own personal anecdote. The first time I ever taught a class about marketing, a university class, and you can almost measure it decades ago, but I was explaining to these students kind of how effective marketing can be and how, as a child, it ingrains itself into your brain. And the most effective out of home campaign I think I've ever seen, and still to this day remember, is if you're ever driving on I-95, when you're driving south from New York to Florida, starting 500 miles away all the way to 1 mile away are the south of the border billboards. And you want to go there so badly. By the time you get there, you have to stop. And it's this like dinky little, side of the road experience. But I've never been more excited about something in my life than when I was driving south on I-95 because of the like countdown of miles to
yeah.
Oh
south of the
my
border.
gosh. That is hilarious, Matt. I
So
was
Well,
not expecting that.
you're not the only one. I mean, it's a real landmark. So
it's
yeah, it's
well
very cool.
but anyway, that was 25, 35 years ago. So yes, it was
It's still
effective
there.
then. It will be effective in the future, right?
Yeah. But I do think, I mean, you're making a good point, actually. Well, sort of. But I mean, it's like the creative is obviously
Compliment
real.
compliment accepted, by the way. You can stop there.
That's what I meant. You did make a good point, but then I'm thinking it really was maybe about the creative. But I think it is about the creative, but it's also about the location, which again makes it
The
so important.
context, right? Yeah.
It's the context and making sure that they match. Otherwise, it
So
doesn't
true.
matter. And that particular, I mean, yeah, there's some interesting ads there for sure.
Mhm.
Um,
So, like, let's think about like the next 5 to 10 years for this industry. Like, what do you think? How is innovation going to lead to some sort of promised land for us in terms of driving interest and growth in the channel? Like,
I mean, I
what do you
really
think
think that
you'll see for the next five to
I
ten
think the
years?
growth in programmatic and out of home is going to drive a lot of new ways of using it. Programmatic and automation, I should say, because they're two slightly different things, or even though they're connected. I think the ability to use data
Sure.
and flexibility that this enables is going to be a main driver for the growth of the industry, and that then in turn enables out of home to be a part of something larger and not the standalone channel. And I think that connection to retail media, that connection to CTV, that connection to television, honestly, the ability to use some of the signage to create like real public experiences in a world where like that doesn't really exist as much anymore. I think we'll see a lot of innovation and new things that you can do with out of home. I just had a meeting a few weeks ago with an international player who was building a large sign out of a department store. They might hate me for saying this, but they were talking about doing like broadcasting live from fashion shows, in Paris or in New York, and then that would drive an audience into that building and show content that, might not even be possible to show on TV. But if they can make a deal with that particular brand, it can then create sales, and they can create an opportunity where people actually gather to see it and then they walk in. There's so many things that you can do with out of home that I think we haven't even thought of yet that digital enables.
Well, so in terms of that, in terms of the tech and the data integration possibilities, are we going to reach a point with out of home and the opportunities around personalization where, and even just individual targeting where you'll know because I am walking by and what I'm listening to on Spotify that like you're going to show me something because I'm there. Is that possible? Is that like, am I
That is
conspiracy
possible.
theorying right now?
I mean, that is possible. I work for a trade association. The other part of what I do is lobbying. And I would say it's like
Privacy issues?
trying to, just because it's possible doesn't mean that you should do it. I think we want to really avoid a few things in out of home where mistakes have been made in other places. One of them is being creepy and follow people around. I think you should open the opportunity for a consumer because we can now create an individual connection through our medium, which we couldn't before because of the phone, for example. The consumer to lean in and ask you for, that connection. I don't think we should push it on them because that doesn't seem to work very well. So I think that's one thing. And by the way, on that, there's another place in out of home that we haven't talked about that I've sort of go back and forth, and that's what's called faux out of home, which is basically AI generated out of home that you then kind of run on social channels. I don't know if you've seen the train in London, the Maybelline train where you put mascara on, like the train drives into the station. I mean, that's not real. I think some of those executions are really cool, but I think again, consumers feel duped. They don't want to be tricked. They don't want fraud. They want everything to be, and I think that's the strength of our medium is that we're not intrusive. You don't have to run past that billboard. And everything is very, very real. So I hope we're not ever getting there, even if it can.
That's fair. Thank you for keeping me away from the creepy zone. That's important.
It's been so lovely having you on here, and I love talking about out of home. So thank you for joining us. Just to kind of wrap this up before our lightning round that Matt leads, what's one piece of advice that you would give to brands listening today to get, if they were considering out of home, for the first time, like what would be sort of like your, reason to tell them to lean in on it?
Well, they really should because it's a way to create something unique and new and incredibly impactful that's going to resonate with, an audience. And for sure, I mean, we have tons of data that shows that it pretty much, I think 93 consumers who were exposed to a digital out of home ad, took action, went to a near store and made a purchase. I mean, like it drives it builds brands and it drives conversion. I think for brands today is to think about out of home as something that is more than just that one launch of your big glossy product. It's the everyday use of it, the use of data that can, help just use it as a performance channel as well. I think that's the most important part. And I mean, lean in, but pick your partner as well. Like pick an incredible creative agency, work with a media agency that really understands how to make, efficient placement and how to build the two together. So do your homework, but definitely don't shy away from it because it really works.
So true. I love it.
Well, now I have to switch careers. So thanks, guys. All right. I feel the FOMO here is too strong.
You do, I'm sure.
No,
You would be excellent. You are a creative mind.
I've had my face on a billboard too, and I can tell you that it had the opposite effect of what I wanted it to accomplish. So sometimes that also goes in the opposite direction.
Well, you and I are dressed the same, so maybe we're kind of part of some sort of out-of-home uniform.
Oh, well, maybe there is some subliminal influence, right?
Like, oh my God, we're like the same color.
We've probably, look, we're both in
Who wore it best?
We're both in New York. Someone was influencing us on some billboard that we both walked past at different times, or maybe at the same time and didn't know. Yeah. So we are going to move very slowly, apparently, to the lightning round, which is, these are quick, these are fun, they're a little snarky, all just like us. So I'm going to ask the questions, but Valerie, feel free to also just chime in if you need with your lightning quick wit. First question, what's the most unexpected place you've actually seen a really good ad?
Oh God, that's a very good question.
Because we know it's not a urinal in a men's room, so.
No, but maybe in a ladies' room, actually. It might be, unexpected, but yeah, it works.
Okay. Yep. Next question, QR codes. Cool comeback story or just kind of annoying?
Well, I have a background in mobile, and I remember when they first kind of surfaced, and I was like, oh my God, that shit is never going to work. And then I was incredibly surprised by their, resurgence. And I actually think it's a cool phenomenon. I think you need to be smart about how you use them, but I like them.
I have one on my phone that I use as just a way for people to scan my LinkedIn. So
yeah, that's so awesome. It's a great thing.
I'm the living embodiment of digital weirdness. What is the biggest either like myth or misconception about the out-of-home advertising space?
That it's unmeasurable.
Agreed.
Because
how do you know, though? How do you know it's the biggest myth? Are you measuring that? I'm kidding. Sorry.
Well, maybe I should measure that, actually. I don't know how to measure that.
Prove it. Prove it, Anna. You can't.
I'm doing the focus group of one here. It's by far the I'm being asked about.
You're our guest, so your answer is the right answer. If you could advertise one thing about Sweden on a giant New York billboard, what would it be?
Aquavit, which I am sure, by the way, might not be allowed because it's liquor advertising. So can I redo that one?
Sure.
I think we take booze on our spectaculars in Times Square.
All right,
okay.
So it would be. I mean, there's so much more about Sweden, but I think our national drink is something that's worth everyone trying.
I'm not sure I've had it. Is it licorice flavored?
What is the flavor? Anything, but it's supposed to be very good for you. The other thing, maybe actually, that I would like to combat is that there's a movie that was made called Midsummer, which is about Swedish midsummer, that has made everyone freaked out about midsummer, which is one of the most fun festive parties that take place in the year. So that would be my thing. Encourage people to try midsummer. You're not going to die.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood can ruin anything fun, so I wouldn't necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater, unless it's really cold bathwater, because it's really cold in Sweden sometimes. Okay, this is going to be the hardest question you're going to be asked by us, or at least by me. So I know you and Val have, definitely worked the circuit together. What's the most memorable thing from a night out with Val? Have you ever... Any good stories that you could share that I wouldn't know or our listeners need to know about?
I can just say this. I'm not going to break any girl code, but I have spent a lot of time with Val in nice bars and restaurants, and she's far more memorable than the ad in the bathroom, and everyone should try and go out with Val at some point, especially as marketers, because she's awesome.
Well, I would say both of you, in your own creative ways, are incredible walking billboards for digital and programmatic and even traditional out of home. So there you go. Okay.
Oh man, thank you.
I had to save it after I threw you under the bus. Speaking of buses, what is the next great frontier or placement opportunity for out of home? We've seen ads on buses. We've seen ads almost everywhere. But what is the one next great placement opportunity?
So again, I would argue the industry is expert at placement, and we've been around a while. So I think we've tapped out most, but I did do an interview once about advertising in space. And given how things are going in the world with global warming and everything else, I think it might be both cornering some space in space and also maybe use, space shuttles as advertising engines. I could see a lot of social media if, that happened.
I mean, the good news is there's a lot of inventory opportunity there. It is not cluttered up there.
Not yet, but I'm sure it will be.
Well, that is something to look forward to. Hopefully we're all around. When that happens, will you come back and take like a victory lap for having predicted that?
I know.
From space. No, I'm just kidding. I think honestly, I think wherever there deserves to be an ad and it's efficient, I think it's already there. I think we've found the...
I was always thinking, and I don't know if this is even considered out of home, but once cars are actually autonomous, like I would imagine there'll be a ton of ads in car.
I mean, Uber's already got that down.
You, Val, what do you think is the place we haven't? You say in autonomous cars.
I think so. I'm not saying like in the back seat of like a ride share, but like on your dashboard.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like somewhere visible to the driver. But again.
No, I think yeah.
What do I know?
That's probably more likely than space too. So no, you might be right.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
we'll have to.
What do you think?
I think it's going to be more along the lines of the augmented reality opportunities that Anna was talking about. So as we get our $100,000 Meta wearable glasses that become affordable, I think as we walk down the street, we're going to see installations in really unique places. But I'm also hopeful that I don't walk into something as a result of being enamored with it, right? Like there's a danger around that too.
Yeah,
I
I would
know.
argue you should be very careful when you do that.
Pokemon
You're wearing
Go
your glasses going
scenario.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's all be safe and let's all
We'll all be wearing bubble suits.
Let's
Walking
be
around.
safe. Let's be smart. But thank you, Anna, for being snarky with us here today.
Thank you for having me. Super fun.
Thank
Thanks.
That was another banger, as the kids say. That was a fantastic conversation, and I learned a lot. Thanks to Anna, Val, and Matt. And you, dear listener, for streaming this episode. Until next time, talk soon, Snarketers.